I'm Sarah Brown, and this is The Mothers, real conversations with leaders, creators, and thinkers about who we are, what we want, and how we build meaningful lives alongside motherhood. Hey everyone, welcome back to the next episode of The Mothers. I'm Sarah Brown. And the summer feels like it's just beginning, yet somehow we're already going back to school. Which means new backpacks, new lunchboxes, new water bottles, and the annual realization that every single damn thing entering that school building must be labeled with something that will actually stick. Enter Mabel's Labels. Mabel's Labels has been a fixture in our house for years. They're the, no pun intended, sorry. They're the labels that arrive in the PTO email, survive the dishwasher and washing machine, and give your child's water bottle at least a fighting chance of making it home. The company was co-founded more than 20 years ago by today's guest, Julie Cole, alongside her sister and two close friends. At the time, Julie was a lawyer and the mother of 3 young children. Her oldest son had recently been diagnosed with autism, and she needed a different kind of working life, one that gave her more flexibility while helping support the cost of his care. So she left law and started making labels in a basement. Today, Julie is the mother of 6, an award-winning entrepreneur, best-selling author, and media personality. Mabel's Labels has grown from 4 women working late into the night to one of the best-known personalized label companies in North America. And Julie is a phenomenal character. She is practical, funny, remarkably capable, and almost aggressively unbothered by the things she's decided do not matter. I don't care about what I don't care about, she told me. Honestly, write that on my forehead and on my wall. This has been one of the most destabilizing summers of my life, across work, extended family, and several things I'm still trying to make sense of. I'm frankly still unclear about what I don't care about anymore. But through all of it, the consistent bright spot has been my own little crew. Jason and the kids, I love you all so much. At the end of the day, it really is about who you're in the foxhole with, the people who share the dark and keep bringing the light. Julie's story is a powerful reminder of that. She built Mabel's Labels with people she loved and trusted, people who could quiet the brain gremlins, take the kids when necessary, make the labels at 2 a.m, and remind one another that they were not doing any of it alone. We talk about the power of team in business and at home, why quitting can be for winners, what fairness in a family actually looks like, and the enormous freedom that comes from deciding what you care about and letting the rest go. If this conversation resonates, please subscribe to The Mothers wherever you're listening, share the episode with someone who needs it, and follow us on Instagram at TheMothersPod. And now, please enjoy my conversation with Julie Cole. Thank you for being here and doing this. I'm also digging... You're not in a barn, but I'm feeling some like rustic vibe behind you. Yes, barn vibes.
It's just one of these to like block.
Oh, it's a tarp.
It's tarp to block off all the shit that's behind me right now.
Yes. The things we do. I mean, there are limitations for what I can do in the background. This is also our living space. So I would love it to be different. One day it'll be even better. But what we do, I love seeing people's like podcast studios. There's what you see on screen, and then there's like the reality of just like the junk that is
honestly
everywhere.
I once did a post on LinkedIn and it was hilarious. It was like me recording like for morning show or something, but it was at home and I'm on my big table, and then there's like it's covered in folded laundry, like covered except for my one laptop, and it's just all, you know how it is.
That's the thing. I know. Before we have our washer dryer, of course, is deep in the basement where I work, and it was running. And just as you jumped on, I was like, oh shit, I got to turn off the washer dryer.
Exactly. Always. And I'm at home today too. Sometimes it's at the office. It can be a little bit, but whatever.
Yes.
Here we are.
We make our best.
We do.
I think a lot about the, I forget some wonderful boss at one point told me the image of the duck calmly above water swimming around, but underneath is like, ah.
That's us. Yeah. That's us. And now
where are you? So easy.
Where are you recording from?
I am in Boston.
You're in Boston.
Okay. Boston, Massachusetts. Well, technically just outside in Newton, Massachusetts. I don't know if you know the Boston area, but it's one of the first suburbs kind of outside of Boston.
So good.
Yeah. And it's a little bit in the prep doc and stuff, but just so you know why the hell I'm here. So I have 3 kids, longtime working mother, had a long life. I'm a recovering. We'll talk about all these things.
We're all recovering.
You describe yourself as a recovered lawyer.
Recovering.
I'm impressed that it's done. Check.
Great 12-step program.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a recovering, I don't know, perfectionist achiever.
Oh,
all the things. You know, I did all the right things, and truly because I found not to do the right thing, but just because I was motivated to. I liked getting better at the things.
And you're a bit wired. You know, maybe you're a bit wired that way.
Yeah. So I went great schools, played a ton of soccer, was a professional athlete, and then I went to Google, and I was there for 12 years and had 3 kids while I was there. And with each kid, I'm sure we'll talk about this too, feminist awakening of like, is this how this works? Both the process and then everything after. And then done having kids, Google by American standards is a wonderful place to have kids, at least in my experience. And then when I was done doing that, I was like, is this still the place that fills my cup? And now I want to go do something that's feels like more personal impact on the world.
Love it.
Which is wonderful, but hard. But it's been a great pivot into the world of media and journalism. And both my parents are writers. I kind of grew up in this anti-corporate environment and where writing and journalism was like a real possibility as opposed to this fantasy career.
Right.
However, when your parents do it, you're never that into it.
Always the way. Yeah.
So in some ways, this is maybe a coming home to who I always was. But we'll see if it lasts.
Love it. Well, there you go. Gotta throw it to the wall, see if it sticks, right? I mean, heck, why not?
Yes.
We've only got the one life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, the real impetus for this show and this whole mission of finding the stories of highly accomplished women who also have big lives outside of that with children, telling their stories from a context of who they are as humans and how remarkable they are and what they wanted to achieve and what it all means to them and when it's too much and why they do it. I feel like the storylines around mothers and working mothers is either you hear only about the professional accomplishments in a business setting or you see them suffering on the playground. And miserable. And I kind of like the person behind all of that is lost to me. So, and there's plenty of conversation that much of it is productive, I think, around motherhood, working motherhood, etc. But I feel like this tier of significantly accomplished, high achieving woman, and again, this is not a better or worse, but just there's the library needs all the books. And I feel like one of the books wasn't there, which was this story of I've reached a certain level of impact professionally and I'm bringing kids along the way. And like, how the hell is that working? Right. How do I feel about it? And so anyway, so it's been wonderful to talk to really remarkable people. And I'm really excited to talk to you.
Awesome.
And Mabel's Labels has been like an intimate part of my life.
Yay.
Like the timing of this conversation.
So
we're recording in May. I think this will come out later in the summer, but prime time for all the damn camp prep. And
camp prep. Then the rolls right into back to school. Now, how old are your kiddos, Sarah?
Oh, so our kids are, this is pop quiz. Okay. 11, almost 12.
Yeah.
I only have half as many as you do, so I shouldn't.
That's all right. No, and there's no only before 3.
So I have he'll be 12 in a month, and then a 9-year-old, and then a newly 5-year-old.
Oh, okay.
So
you're out of the like diapers and all, you're coming up for
out
air.
Of the diapers. Yes.
Yeah.
And it does. Everyone always says that, like, it really does. You're never not on and needed. Your role does evolve.
We can talk about that, and I can talk about how it actually parallels your growing business.
Yeah. Yes. You start to delegate. You're not as hands-on. You kind of let them take risks and grow. And but it all, and it becomes a lot of mental labor too, as opposed to like I feel like the
emotional
physical labor and emotional. Yes.
And it does fall
the
on
mental
moms.
and emotional is always there.
Yeah,
physical element tapers a little bit.
That's right. Like we're getting a full night's sleep. We're not like chasing toddlers around. It is physically less demanding, but then there are some emotional and mental and social stuff that can get a little trickier to navigate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Always on, especially as you know, we'll talk about this, but well, it's one thing if you have work that's a little bit like clock in, clock out. If anyone's found that, tell me.
Like,
you're also
what's this mythology you speak of?
I know. But it is true to be building a company while also essentially building 3 kids, and a family over on top of it. It's a lot. but you'll tell me how to do it.
Yeah.
So I love one of my favorite parts of doing any of this is learning people's like stories. I really truly find everyone's journey to where they are now endlessly fascinating. And like, how did you make that choice and why? And that seemed like a really hard thing. And like, I love that. I mean, you'll flesh this out for me, but I love that there are a lot of different hats that you tried on early, and then Mabel's labels came, and that's been an incredibly long tenure, which is kind of unprecedented. I haven't seen a lot of people and a business surviving so long. And somehow you had 6 children. You wrote a book. You are a contributor in so many places. There's so many parts of you. I'd love to go back to early days, Julie. You're from
Toronto,
the party state above us?
Yeah,
the party
exactly. Exactly. We welcome you.
All right. So we were talking about going back to the early days, the origin story. Yeah. Canadian. I know you're back up north, I guess, from me now. But what was your early childhood like? Many siblings, a lot of kids running around.
Oh, you're going
one
way
of the oldest
back.
daughters. I'm just sort of curious. I think a lot of we don't have to sit there very long, but I think a lot of we are every age that we've ever been. I think and we're sort of always kind of like trying to move on from that or recover that person or whatever. Like I do think there's some programming that we have, and I think some of that does happen early. So
I do.
And
I also do think that we are born with our personalities. And I know my mom would attest to this because she kept journals of us when we were babies. And at 3 months, it was like, Julie does not want to miss out on any of the action. She needs to be the center of attention. And that was, she just never wants to go to sleep. And then, one of my sisters who's a real introvert, it was like, my mom wrote, oh, she's not very verbal. She doesn't make a lot of noise. She doesn't want a lot of attention. And so my mom swears that we're born with our personalities. But I will say, I was born to my parents, really good people, both teachers. There were 4 of us. I'm very close with all my siblings. In fact, I started Mabel's Labels with one of them. And and the other was our operations manager for many years. And so it was it's funny when you ask about like going to the Wayback Machine, because it's something I spoke about actually recently on a Mother's Day podcast or interview. And I think something that, people often say with entrepreneurs who leave the traditional workforce and do something kind of brave, that they're so brave. And, a part of me feels that one of the privileges that people don't talk about. I mean, we talk about, how wealth is privilege or, your skin color, or like there are all sorts of economic things. But for me, a privilege that isn't talked about is having parents who were self-regulated and emotionally intelligent who raised you. And I had that. So I feel like I was well set up to be confident and feel like, I can do the things. So I think it takes a different level of bravery for people who don't have that. And I just like to sometimes acknowledge that.
Very well said. I completely agree, and absolutely worth talking about. It's not often discussed. And I think more often than that, I feel like you hear these sort of success stories and they go back to the beginning, and there's like all this trauma that like they're kind of using work as a way to metabolize in some way that sometimes is healthy, sometimes. But very well said. So where were you in the birth order of these 4? I'm curious. Are you?
Yeah. So I was number 3. So I'm like the middle, attention-seeking middle child. But we were all born very close in age. And, my sister lives 2 doors down from me. It's a bit of cousin palooza around here. She's got 3 kids. So it's been, we've remained very close through the years, and it was a nice experience. And I think, that's why when I went to have my family, I was like, I thought I'd have more, because people are always like, why did you have 6 kids? And I'm like, I had a good experience with siblings and a bigger family, 4 being kind of the smaller of the big families. Yeah. And also Daddy was one of 5. And we were like, we'll probably have like more than 2 and see how we go. And just, it went well. And enjoyed it. And I'm very type E. I don't get my knickers and not about much. My kids didn't really stress me out like the way they can a lot of people. Like I never, had to go and close the door and cry. I never like none of that really hit me. I was lucky I didn't have any sort of postpartum depression. I had easy pregnancies. There were a lot of my parents lived near me. I felt supported. So it was it was a good experience. And I did, I have enjoyed these babies, and I have enjoyed every age and stage. And now, we're this far along, and it's so wonderful seeing their relationships. I kind of feel like, they are just their own like little ecosystem. And
Totally.
because like
Totally.
5 of them are in college, 1 is left in high school. So when they're all home, it's a vibe.
Incredible.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big grocery expense, but it's fun.
I believe you. That's awesome. One minor tech thing. Your microphone is catching a little bit of like your breathing, which
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if it's.
Let me just move it and see if there's anything.
I don't know if it's
okay. Let's just
further
see if
down or maybe further. I don't know. It looks like
Yeah,
it's where it's supposed to
let me
be.
just put it. How does that sound now? Is that okay? I've got out of the way a bit, but are you
It's a little bit, maybe a little bit lower.
lower? Okay, how's that?
I think that's great.
You give it a
Do you
try.
mind? Is that okay? Yeah.
Totally fine. Let me have a
Thank
sip.
you.
And then what? Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So here, while you're taking a sip, I was curious, were you always looking forward to where your kind of education led you? So college, master's in education, law school. One of my many curiosities is how people figure out what they want to do, as someone who often is curious about what the hell I want to do.
Yeah.
I'm curious where does Julie growing up with all these siblings, college, education, both your parents were teachers, maybe that's
Right.
why. But where did those pursuits come from? Or did they make sense to you at the time?
Yeah, it's so funny. And it's interesting now because as I'm coaching my own kids through that, and some of them kind of get stressed out and they're like, I don't know, am I doing the right course? What I'm going to be when I grow up? What if I choose this and then I don't like it? I'm like, dude, I was like a lawyer and now I'm a label maker. Are you kidding me? Like, you'll be fine. Just, and my thing is like, just study what you love. And, we just can't predict the future. And to worry about it is just so nonsensical. So for me, I would say throughout my sort of childhood and teen years, I probably always was drawn to more leadership roles. I was well liked, I'm social, like all that stuff was good for me. And another thing that I feel gets rewarded and isn't always fair is that I feel like my personality always kind of got rewarded, like the things that I do. Whereas I see a lot of now introverted leaders who are so effective and lead amazing teams, but they haven't had the same sort of cheerleading or, like I would get the leadership award or I was valedictorian. I felt like I was rewarded just for my personality in a way. And I think as we're learning, and as I was a mom raising kids, and some are like me, some are different, whatever. And I'm like, wow, the ones who are like quiet and more introverted and thoughtful, like there's a lot of magic that happens there. And, people I think are always like, oh, they're shy. And it's like, they just take a minute. Like that's okay. And also having raised some neurodiverse kids, my neurospicy ones might be a little bit different and not respond in ways that traditionally would get rewarded. So it is interesting to note that as well.
Absolutely.
Just as we're raising kids and we're in leadership positions in work, like pay attention to the quiet ones. They've got something very interesting to say. Give them the space and the time to process before you move on, right? So I went off to university, to college, and, loved it, had a great experience, very involved in, I ran residence halls and I was very involved in student politics. And then, so I went on and did a master's in education administration because I thought I wanted to stay in that college space and maybe be like a dean of students. But I always kind of had law in the background and I liked study and I liked student life. And I was in a position, again, this is a privilege where you can study more if you want, so I was able to study more. I've got some of my kids have friends whose parents are like, okay, you have to come out with a job. You have to be in there to be a nurse or you need a job at the end of it. And because I think, I was from a family that really valued education and we didn't do things like go on expensive holidays. We didn't do that sort of thing. We kind of focused where our finances were just aligned with our values, and education was one of those. So I was able to, have some fun and spend 10 years in post-secondary education. And so then I landed in law, which I liked, and I am very much a feminist, unapologetically. I, worked for Indigenous women's services. I volunteered at women's shelters. I did, a lot of sort of restraining order kind of work. I worked behind a bulletproof glass, like for the kind of clients. So I thought that would be my path more than aid and working with women and families. And then, so what happens then? I have, a couple kids. My eldest child gets diagnosed with autism. So then I see the shift or want to do the shift of leaving the traditional workforce. I'd already been chatting with my sister and our two good friends from college who ended up marrying my brother and my young uncle. And we were talking about a product that was missing from the market. We were like, like good mom entrepreneurs, we should do this because nobody's doing it. And, we can fill this gap. And so when the lifestyle change needed to happen and we had this idea nagging away at us, it was like the perfect storm to say, let's go Mabel's Labels. And that's how it happened.
Were you, so law school happened in Australia? Am I right?
Yeah, Daddy was Australian. We met at NYU and then we ended up going to Australia. We had a couple kids there and then we moved back. And had the last ones here in North America.
Wow. So
lots of adventures.
You've experienced parenthood in many countries.
I have, yes. And
where is the worst?
Oh yeah. Well, I can only imagine. I haven't had babies in probably once the worst, but
of the ones that you've touched. So NYU, you had your first kids in Australia.
I did. Okay. And it was very pleasant because there they have it is like a private and public system, but if you make a certain amount of money, you have to do private, which I kind of like. But so we had private healthcare. So it meant when I had the babies, I was in like this pretty deluxe situation. I think I was in now look, I did have 6 C-sections. So, I'm going to spend a few extra days there, but it was quite private room. I think I had champagne with dinner. Like it was pretty posh. Yeah. And then when I came to Canada for the next 3, we're very much more like a public healthcare. So, it wasn't as fancy, but it was healthcare was excellent. My doctors were excellent. They made me, pushed me out of the hospital a little sooner than I wanted to, but I mean, all of it was good. And people do often ask, with 6 C-sections does it get worse every time? And it really doesn't. Each one is of their own. The only thing that we really had to manage was I had to have the last few babies a couple weeks early because they don't want any pressure on your uterus if you go into labor and that sort of thing. But it was all good. All bunch of healthy kids, great births, deliveries, whatever.
Good for you.
Yeah.
So you were lawyering alongside. Kind of walk me through what you were doing. What did your professional life look like with each kid?
Yeah. So at that time, I had the first 3. So I was doing my law articles while pregnant. I had gone to law school. I had kids during law school. It's all a bit hazy now.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But when when my eldest got diagnosed with autism, he had just turned 3.
Okay.
And he already had 2 younger siblings. So I did pack them in tight. So I was not working at that time because I had all sorts of humans. So it was a matter of not going back after my 4-month-old, Yeah. And then, so he got diagnosed and then it was okay, now it's advocacy, setting up programs, also managing his other siblings. And then, me and the gals sat down and we're like, okay, let's do a business plan. Let's take minutes. Let's get this show on the road. And there we are. Women are very we're really scrappy and we get things done. And sometimes I'm sure you do the same too. You reflect back, you're like, how, but you just do it. Right.
Yeah.
And you manage.
Was it a big choice to not go back? This is something I struggle with is you invested so much time in sort of establishing certain careers. I feel like, and again, I'm curious how the geography of where you were played into this, because I think America has a very, you tell me, I feel like there's sort of high performance expectations of people, and it's a little manipulative. Is it intrinsic or is it extrinsic? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm curious. I think a lot of mothers that I've spoken with often they'll go through periods of all in work-wise, pivoting, sort of ramping up and down a little bit. And there's a sense of, it's not always a comfortable moment, even if it's what they want. I'm just curious if you can go back to that time where you're wow, 3 young kids. I had this big law career. Is it okay to not go back?
And yeah, exactly. And you know what? I think there's a couple of things at play here. And I think one is that we have to remember, and I mentor a lot of young entrepreneurs and women who do that shift or that pivot. And I think the thing you have to remember is not to regret any of that stuff, because I think I have brought so many of the lessons and even the mindset and the way of thinking, the way my brain is and what I've learned, I have brought that to what I do now. And so I don't think you can ever, and I mean, Sarah, there was that moment where I was like, oh my God, law school was so hard and all I do is freaking change diapers and make labels. No question about it, right? But you're also doing things like putting together a shareholders agreement. You're doing, research, you're doing problem solving, you're doing crisis management, you're managing people. Like there's so many lessons that you've learned that you bring and apply. And so I think you just have to have that perspective that every step of the way, you're learning something to bring to the next thing you do. So it's never, ever a waste. But yeah, certainly you think, gosh, what am I doing? Like, I'm not now getting a salary. We're not going on a holiday. I'm just like in the basement making labels with my gals and like till 2 a.m. and getting up at 6 with kids. And, it's not like people romanticize entrepreneurship, right? They think it's all like TED Talks and book deals, but it's like making labels in a basement and like not going on a holiday. That's what it really looks like. It's not like pouring a glass of wine and throwing Netflix on when the kids are in bed. It's like not lying down with the kids to let them fall asleep, because if you fall asleep, you're going to lose your best 4 hours of work of the day, right?
Yeah.
There is all that. So you do question it. For us, it was something we were really passionate about. We had each other. And I think, that solo entrepreneur gig could be very lonely. Having each other was probably a bit of that superpower that we had. And also from an early growth perspective, we could divide and conquer. And we had lots of different talents and brains at the table, right? And also that could be tricky to navigate too, right? Because you got lots of brains. But I think for us, it worked out well. And the other thing too is that you're also dealing with whatever maybe generational money, stability, trauma that your family has. So like, for instance, my grandparents moved from Ireland in 1950 with their family. One was my mother, and they set up shop, and all grandpa wanted was security. He worked at the steel mill. He had this on the weekends. He was doing contracting on the side. I mean, this man worked constantly just to provide for his family and have stability. So when we're saying to grandma and grandpa, my sister's going to quit her teaching job and I'm leaving law to make labels in a basement, they're losing their minds because, they just see it as so risky. All they wanted was stability. So I think a lot of people need to also work through when they're doing that pivot and doing the next thing. They're going to get a lot of naysayers, and it's not because they don't believe in you and they don't trust you. They just are like, they just want the best for you, and they want you to be able to pay your mortgage. They want you to be able to send your kids to college. And, and so I think there's a lot of that has to be processed too, that people sometimes don't think about when they are doing that pivot and maybe leaving corporate to do the stay-at-home thing. And you are thinking about, well, what happens then when they grow up and I want to go back? Have I lost too much time? Can I catch up? What about that, like that maternal gap that happens in the workplace? But again, I think mothers are very equipped to go back to the workplace because there's a lot of lessons in caregiving that you bring to the workforce. Again, that problem solving that, so I think, mothers we know mothers are excellent employees.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we know that. Yeah.
You're lucky to have us. I completely agree.
Right.
You talk about essentially the team, the we-ness that you were doing this together, which I'm such a team person. I cannot understand this more, but what was it like? How did they show up for you? And who are you referring to when you're saying we were in it together?
Yeah. So it was my co-founders, right? So it was like my sister and then those two friends who were my brother and my young uncle. And, some were on mat leave at the time, some were working full time and we were all juggling lots of things. We, young and figuring this out. But the way that we could show up was that, we understood each other. So if somebody had the sick kid, it was, we get it. We got you, girl. Or if somebody was having a baby, it'd be like, okay, don't come make labels and we'll drop a meal around. We would just, or I'd be like, drop the kids off to me. If you guys need to do labels all day, come, I'll tag team the kids, drop them all to me and you guys go and research new equipment or whatever. So being able to do that, and keep in mind too, this is 23 years ago. So there was a lot going there. There weren't podcasts we could listen to and learn. There wasn't social media where we could connect with people. If we were going to pick brains of other entrepreneurs, it was literally turning up some chamber event and talking to an old white guy. And that was not relatable. Right. So at least we had each other who understood the struggles of, and the demands that were different to the traditional workforce when you're an entrepreneur.
I look back in what you're describing and I think, oh, wow, so simple. And of course it wasn't. Can you compare, contrast, imagine starting Mabel's Labels or whatever it would be today. Would you rather have started your business back then or now?
I love what we did. And I do look at it like the good old days. It was a special time and it wasn't easy. And I'm not glamorizing it at all, but it was simpler times. And it was fun to be like, we'd be making those labels at 2 a.m., having some laughs and just being like, oh, we're ridiculous. What have we done? Who let us, who didn't stop us from doing this? Right.
Yeah.
And our kids were little and it was kind of magical and hard and all that too. But it's interesting now because, as I said, I do a lot of mentoring and I'm, really part of that entrepreneurship and small business ecosystem and speak at a lot of events. And it's wild. I was at like Ecom North not that long ago. And I think about some of the things that took us so long to figure out. And these kids now are like just hopping on AI. I'm like, what you just did there, that took us 6 months of hard labor, to create that. Right. And just even like we were an e-commerce company. So back then, we had to have a website. We were nerds, we had to we ended up having nerdy friends who were able to make a website for us. But, it was even a time where people were nervous about putting their Visa into the computer machine. So we were navigating a lot of that early e-commerce, stuff. And those early days when you're a poor entrepreneur and you can't afford to like go in Parenting Magazine and spend $10,000 on a half-page ad, but there wasn't social media for us to but once social media did hit, we were like all over the mom bloggers. I've been a Mom 2.0 conference like 10 times.
Was there in Texas.
I was just there.
Oh my gosh. I should have seen you. I'm sorry.
That's so great. Yeah, I go every year. I mean,
I'll be in Vegas next year. Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. It was like my 17th one. It just came up in my memories of me and my like panel speaking 10 years ago. Yeah. So I've always been a part of like that mom space, but before then we did recognize that moms would talk about our products because, we're very word of mouthy. We talk about things we love and what we don't love. So it was great. Very early on, we had some early success. I think that was very motivating for us too, because we did get a couple of really nice PR hits. And in magazines where people are like, oh my gosh, look at what these 4 moms have created. Every mother needs us, it's back to school.
Totally.
So we got some nice stuff there. And then even our product just seen in the wild, a kid would have it at soccer and mom would see it and be like, where did you get that for your kid? So all of that was happening. But definitely when social media hit, it really brought that word of mouth online. Yeah. And it was a bit of the Wild West because we could afford it. I couldn't afford an ad, but I could afford to like tweet a producer of the Today Show and be like, hey.
Yeah. It's helpful to think of. I'm an I was born in the wrong generation. I tolerate social media. I understand that it has its use case. To me, the perils are now the classic, like now everyone has a microphone. There are a million people trying to start things. It looks like they're all going better than yours. Like all of the things, like with all of the opportunity, it means there's so many more people out there. There's something that I love the idea of you with 3 co-founders in the basement, wine or no wine. There aren't as many messages being thrown at you necessarily to say like, how do you stack up against this?
Yeah.
Is that true or am I being idealistic?
Look, I think a couple of things. Of course, it didn't take long before we were ripped off and, there's like a ton of label companies now. But if you remain innovative, the most innovative, if your product is the best, if you are connecting with your customers, if you're giving them what they want, if you have relationships, if you're being visible, I mean, your story is what's going to separate you from your competitors. And I do think, bringing that personal brand is ever more important. People want to buy from Mabel's Labels because they want poor old Julie with those 6 kids and that kid with autism. Like, let's buy her labels, and it is like just making those connections.
But you don't mind. I think that's part of, I'm like, are we exploiting ourselves to sell our business, sell our stuff? I don't know.
I think there's a way to do it. And I have seen that. I've seen that and it's gross and it's not authentic. Some people, I've seen it, they think they're being authentic by sharing things on like LinkedIn and whatever. I'm like, you're not. I've got such a authenticity hangover from that because it's fake. You're trying to look genuine, but unless you are, like, you can keep some things private, right? But do share the lessons, share what you're learning, share, like, people want to peek under the covers of them brands that they're buying from. So
totally,
live out loud. I mean, I know, and sometimes that's not comfortable for CEOs or founders or whatever, but you know what, sorry. Like,
Yeah.
like people are like, even people who are uncomfortable with social media, I'm like, that's fine. But people are talking about your industry and your
Correct.
products. Do you want to be there or not? Like, that's
Oh
your
my God, I
call.
know. My first kind of real job was in PR, and that was the message we always said was
Yeah.
like, they're going to be talking about you anyway. Don't you want
Yeah.
to be out there to manage the conversation?
That's
It's true.
and you can do things that in a way that you're comfortable with. Like, so maybe you don't want
Hmm.
to go on TV and talk about whatever, but you might say, okay, part of my marketing plan about my personal brand and some visibility is I'm going to ask to go on 3 podcasts a month, or I'm going to
Hmm.
ask to write this, or I'm going to start a Substack, or I'm going to do what can you do just to be a little bit more visible
Yeah,
in a comfortable way?
totally. So I want to, the earlier days of Mabel's Labels, I often tell myself this idea of like, it's always darkest just before the dawn. Were there, what was a moment where, or was it a series? Do you remember a time where you started to go from, is this anything? Is this working? To this is something and this will work? Or how did you, do you remember that phase?
Yeah,
Or
I
did it not go
mean,
that way?
yeah, no, you for sure have those moments. Like I can remember lying in bed going, what have we done? Like why
Mm.
what but I will say because we had some early indicators that it made sense, that our
Hmm.
product was making sense to the market, that I don't think we ever felt that like despair of
Hmm.
like, oh, this is never going to work. And we could, like, when one of us was being a naysayer, being like a Debbie Downer, the others would be like, hey, no, we got this.
Yep.
And that is the thing with solo entrepreneurs too. Like those brain gremlins can get at you and tell you you're not worthy or whatever. So sometimes, like when that's happening, that's why it's so important to have a network so that
Hmm.
you're not making it so hard on yourself and you're shutting those brain gremlins down when they lie to you sometimes, right?
Yes.
So you've
Yes.
got to make sure that you're talking to people and you're connecting. And so that was something where if one of us was feeling like, what have we done? The others were there to rally. And I
Hmm.
think that was really helpful. But I also will say that I think sometimes quitting is for winners. Like if I was still in the basement 23 years later making labels at 2 a.m., I should have left. Like that's
Hmm.
done. That's why you see serial entrepreneurs. They try something, doesn't work. They take the lessons, they move and apply the lessons
Hmm.
to the next thing they do. And that's okay. I think there's a real gift in failing fast,
Hmm.
right? Because I think we also have that sunk cost mentality, right? Like, but I've already put this much time in it. I'm just going to keep putting more time
Totally.
in it. And then it's like
Yeah.
you get on the wrong train. The longer
Yeah.
you stay on it, the more expensive and longer it is to get back. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
okay to be like, you know what? Business plan. I've tried it. I'm following it. Nothing's happening. I've made these shifts. It's still, maybe it's the economy. Maybe it's the
Yeah.
time. Maybe I don't have the skill set. Maybe I have to do a key hire. But you know what? It's okay to leave. And I think
Hmm.
there's a real skill in knowing when to leave at the right time.
Yeah. 100%. There's a fun book about quitting coming out from this
Oh,
wonderful um,
ooh,
Harvard educated, New York Times writer,
yeah,
excellent athlete runner, all about quitting. That is
yeah,
this. It's basically like, actually, maybe it's not the worst thing.
yeah.
Maybe it's a gift to yourself. But the idea of finding your way through these harder times, I was curious if you could, how your, I'm thinking about this now. Like when you move into a business to start a new thing, how do you define what success is, both within the
Right,
context of the business and then also how it affects, like, you have a whole life that's a part of
right.
this also.
Mhm.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how your definition of success kind of evolved probably over time with Mabel's Labels, and because you said you were like, we're following the business plan. If it's not working, then we'll bail. Essentially, I'm oversimplifying. But how
Well,
did
we
you?
were never going to. I'm just saying
Yeah,
that because we had enough evidence that it was going
yeah,
to stick.
totally,
Mabel's label
totally.
stick. But I'm just saying, like for other people, it's okay if it doesn't. You've got to be following. So I think there's a lot of things. I mean, success can mean different things to different people, obviously, because you've got to
Yeah.
ask, like, why am I doing this? Right. So
Yes.
for me, success in those early days was okay, so we're growing, right? And then when we started getting more meaningful, like at first we're like, let's just see how this goes. We'll say we're going to grow by this much, but we don't really know. And we
Hmm.
also don't know what our cycle looks like, right? We don't know that, oh, at back to school, it's a gong show. Oh, at camp
Hmm.
season, oh, but January's quiet. So how are we going to fill that? So once
Hmm.
you're learning your cycle, that takes a little bit of time too. So for us, for sure, it was growth defines success. Also, like how many hires successfully handing off things as time went by, which could be hard for entrepreneurs. We want to hold on to all of the, it was okay hiring the worker bees who made the labels and packed them up. But then when we hire managers, it's very hard not to micromanage them. So being able to successfully hand off some of those bigger things so that you can be working so hard on the business, not so much in the business. I think when our last partner quit their day job, that was a really momentous moment for us, because then we're like, oh, wow, we're actually paying ourselves a bit of salary now. And enough that this person can quit their job and like, we're doing okay. And then of course, for me, I'm like, how is my family? Is this working for us? How is my son doing? Am I finding the balance and I'm going crazy or am I good? Like, how is it working for us? Are we able to manage? And that was, that was always doing like temp checks about that. So
Can you tell me more about that? Because that's something I feel like a lot of people that are listening are people who are high performing on all aspects of their life, like really want to be excellent, not to get the trophy, but that all parts of their life that they've now, once you have kids, you're operating within constraints, obviously. So the things that get time are very important to us. And we want to honor that and respect that and invest in that correctly. But building a business, having a big career, in a way that's sort of outside of your control, that can balloon in a lot of ways and pull you in a lot of directions. I was curious how the checking in that you did and what the role of Mabel's labels, what that took on in your life. And something that I wrestle with is a lot of this idea. There's sort of the stability of a traditional job is in some ways a very generous thing to do. I'm highly qualified in a lot of different things. I could go get a paycheck on a regular basis, but I might not be happy. But the family might be more stable.
Yeah.
Now pursuing something that is more personally fulfilling, or exciting or whatever, insert like blank here, fill in the blank here, but it has a different sort of tax on the broader family sometimes that means mom's more fulfilled, but maybe she's a little more scattered or personally invested in what she's doing outside of like life with, in my case, husband and kids. So I don't know if you could talk about that side of things, about how to make work.
Yeah, for sure.
When you have a big family, a big, awesome family.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to consider. I think sometimes, when you're in that stage of like building like your corporate life, or you're like, we've got a, mortgage to pay. Sometimes you have to hold your nose and do it. Right. And then in those times, that's when you fill your cup, maybe doing something else. Maybe you have a book club. Maybe you are taking a course. Maybe you're doing something else. But sometimes we have to do our job, because and it's, again, that whole notion of knowing when to quit, right? Again, the skill and the timing of that. Now, one of the beautiful things about starting a business is that you get to create the culture you want. So for us, it was very much, we very highly valued productivity, not presenteeism. So, you don't have to sit in a chair here from 9 to 5 every day. If your kid has a Christmas concert, go. You don't have to pretend you're sick, and then tell us about it. Like, if you're meeting your goals, why do I care? We ourselves knew that we were doing business plans during play dates and, all of that stuff. I think one of the things that I highly valued was the flexibility that entrepreneurship gave me. I went to, all the apple orchards at the kindergarten, school trips or whatever. But what people need to realize is that your flexibility doesn't get your work done for you. So I was up at night, at midnight on my computer, but that was a life I chose. And that's what I wanted. That's exactly what I wanted. So things for me that weren't very valuable were like me time and sleep. If you want to do the things like build a business and have 6 kids, some's got to give. You're not like, maybe just have 2 kids, or maybe don't start a business. But if you want to have like a rest and go for a manicure, my life was not for you. Just not. And that's okay. Right.
Yes.
And I think too, like just with the families and with the checking, and one of my probably biggest things I had going for me is that you're talking about people who are like perfectionists and want to do high achieving, whatever. I don't care about the stuff I don't care about. So like my kids are fine. And I often joked, like when the pool opened, that was the end of bathing season. And it was true. Like if I'm having a party and somebody says, oh, can I bring something? I always say, yes, I would like you to do this. I have no problem. My friends, I would say, come to the party early so that they could bathe the child. I would trick them into putting kids to bed. Like, I have no problem. You could come over right now. I don't care if you think my house is messy. It's not a priority for me. So I don't have to be perfect at all the things. I've never baked a birthday cake. It's not what I do. I make the money that buys the birthday cake. What I do like to do is like have a fun party that everybody feels great about. My kid loves, and it doesn't have to have ponies and whatever. It can just be pin the tail on the donkey. I don't care, so I think letting myself off the hook on a lot of things that don't fuss me leaves a lot of space to do the things that do fuss me very well, like parenting and running a business. Are my kids getting gourmet meals? No. Are their sandwiches cut into hearts? No. In fact, they're probably making their own sandwich. But I will say that these kids have been raised in a way that they have seen that a woman can be passionate about her family and passionate about her business at the very same time.
Yes. I love this. This is gold. Write a whole book about it. Maybe that is what like a mother entails. I don't care about what I don't care about.
Yeah.
I don't care about the things I don't care about, like, is huge. I don't hear any glimmer of mom guilt. And I hear a lot of clarity of what you want. Is that true from the beginning? Like, I think that's where when I get, no offense to my friends, but when I get frustrated with this sort of mom guiltishness, and I understand to a degree, but there's part of it, it's like, you have to kind of you have to make a choice and kind of own guilt, other sides about it. Yeah.
I don't get it. Like, I don't have mom guilt. I gave it up 5 kids ago. Like, I just don't, because what would I feel guilty for? Okay. So maybe I'm feeling like, oh, I haven't spent enough time with that kid, or we need to. So then I make a change. I'm like, you know what, dude, you hop in the car with me, come to the groceries with me. I feel like you said something yesterday I didn't follow up on that I want to check in on. And then we have that moment, or, like, there are ways. And also, like, what's mom guilt about? Often it's about caring about what people think. And, so if you're following somebody on social who just looks like the perfect mom, they make you feel like crap, unfollow them. Like, curate a list curate your feed that makes you feel good. I mean, and also, like, the thing is, I screw up for sure. I mean, we all do. And then I apologize and I tell my kids what I learned from it. And then we move on. And that's why there's no shame in my game. And my kids apologize. Like, they make mistakes. They never lie to me, because you're allowed to make mistakes.
Yeah.
We honor that.
It sounds like you have a very healthy sense of self-worth, that's not contingent necessarily on something else. I mean,
I think I've got a good, like, I think that my secret sauce is like that whole, if you just try not to care what people think, and sometimes it takes practice. And I am at an age now where, like, when you hit the menopause, you have 0 shits to give. But I probably have I've always probably known that, like, I'm the boss of my family. I know what's best for them. I'm the mother. Like, I'm good. And I'll make mistakes, and that's okay. And the weird thing too, Sarah, is that, like, what actually happens and what they think happens can be totally different. So it kind of lets you off the hook. I'm going to give you an example. My kid was learning to drive, and we're driving along, and he stops at a stop sign. He's like, yeah, I have to work really hard to make sure I stop, because you and dad always do rolling stops. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, you and dad never stop at stop signs. And I'm like, look, there are things that I do poorly when I drive, but I always stop at stop signs. But I can't convince him of that. I'm not going to try and, if that's his perception, that's his reality. So I'm just like, oh, I'm going to have to start paying attention to that.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, what, like, when our kids come back and say, oh, you never, it'll be like, oh, okay. Sorry that hurt you.
Yes. Or we do a lot of, like, storyline correction. We're like, no, like, your sister didn't push you down the stairs. You tripped.
Yeah. But then, so sometimes there is that correction and there is that. But if they've got a perception, then you're like, oh, okay. So the things that we sometimes think are a really big deal are not a big deal to them. And then sometimes we think something's nothing, and then they throw it back at you. You're like, really? That's how that landed? Interesting.
Yeah.
So
yes, totally.
It's kind of freeing, really.
Yeah. How did, if I can ask, and we can cut this totally. I'm part of the effort behind this is sort of like pulling things out of the closet and sort of putting it out a lot of the conversations we get into are the ones that would otherwise be sort of hush hush in the corners of like the CEO's office. And I think that's a disservice to people that are trying to grow into these roles or take on these things. So I was just curious if like I wanted to kind of, I don't know, get a flavor of partnership at home is, I think, really can be a really important foundational thing for building a business, building a family. And I feel like you stretched in a lot of ways, which are incredible. And I was curious if you'd be willing to talk a little bit about how growing a business, growing a family can be hard at home.
Yeah.
And how to, I don't know if it's lessons or if it's wisdom you've learned about yourself from that, but it's something I do think it's a team. This is a team experience. And I think
I can speak to my experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to kind of hear that if that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think one of the things when you go to start a business or do a pivot or a shift out of corporate or whatever is that if you have a partner or a family, you better manage those expectations. Like, what is this going to really look like? Because if you come home and you're like, hey, babe, I'm going to start making labels in a basement. So once the kids are in bed, I'm going to disappear for hours at a time. We're not going to be able to, we're going to do without a salary. We're going, like, what's that really going to look like? Because if they're not on board with that and super supportive and behind you, the business will fail or the relationship will fail. And I find that with kids too, like even in those early days, like I remember when cell phones came out and telling the kids, okay, look, I'm coming to your hockey game, but I have to do two things. I need to do one email and I got to take one phone call. So if you look up and I'm looking at my phone, those are the two things that I'm doing. And then I would stick to it. Right. So I don't want to get a goal and look up and I'm just like this, I want to be, but I would just, as long as you manage the expectations and they understand and they're on board for it. And also, I mean, I think with any family, when it's a working family and both partners are working, there has to be some really good communication about, who's doing what roles. And I do see things fall apart because we know that households aren't run democratically and women are carrying the invisible load and doing the things. Like I know for us, Daddy-O would find out which dance classes the kids were in at the recital. And he'd be like, oh, that one does tap now. And I'm like, yeah, for 2 years. Yeah. Or, but I was that person and I actually liked it that way. In fact, as like the default parent, I really, it sounds terrible, but I loved it. Like I would do things like if I got up with sick kids in the night, I didn't wake him up. I dealt with the sick kids. And I can remember once he got up in the morning, he's like, oh, how was the night? And I was like, oh, I had 4 pukers. But I didn't, because the fact of the matter was I needed him to turn up to work and be on, because that was our salary. That was our bread and butter. So I purposefully, people would be like, oh, well, why doesn't he do that? I'm like, because somebody's got to keep this ship afloat. Somebody's got to pay for my son's therapy, which was $40,000 a year at the time. Yeah. And I didn't want to do without that. I was like, he's partner tracked. I need him to make partner so that we can do like, so I didn't mind. And those are conversations, like obviously now, if getting up in the night is hard for you, I did have that thing where I could go on very little sleep. It was weird. It was weird. But, you have to be having those conversations about who's going to manage one, because resentment can build in. And I think the other thing too that I learned was you do need help. I went a long time without help. And I got a nanny when the 5th kid turned 1, and that was 3 kids too late. And I think that was maybe my little downfall of being like, I can do all the things, well, I'm not in the traditional workforce, but I also was thinking about money. I'm like, started a company. We've got Daddy-O's salary, but can I be paying for childcare while I try and do the business that I'm doing so I can be home with my kids? But I think you have to really be like, you have to be very intentional about get somebody to clean your house, be very organized, do the meal prep, do all that stuff, because it's really going to be helpful. And it's really going to be helpful if you do get your kids to be independent. Short-term easy is long-term hard. So, the sooner you teach them to help out and give them chores and be independent, getting dressed. And of course, when you have 6 kids, you have to do that, right? But I think everybody should be doing with their kids. I always say, I don't do for my kids what they can do for themselves, right? And we know that we know from the Harvard study that kids who have chores have the better outcomes in life. Yeah. It's better than rep football. It's better than the the summer abroad. It's better than all the things. So don't feel guilty about that,
Because they feel like they matter.
And they do. And they learn important skills. They're better roommates.
Yes.
They're better partners like at university,
Mm-hmm.
the college. They're just better people. So a lot of parents aren't giving their kids chores because they're trying to be like, oh, well, you should be at dance 20 hours a week, or you should be at cheer, or you should be at this. And it's like, kids can play on the street, and kids can go to the park and they can play street hockey and they can play in their very own city. Give them the chores.
Yeah. Julie, you're awesome. I think everything you said, I was like, yes. Everything you said, especially personally, the point that you made about, there were times where you would get up in the middle of the night the entire time and wouldn't wake up your husband, and because he had to go to work. And I think there's a confusion a little bit out there about what fairness really means and what an equitable household looks like. And I certainly learned this from one kid to the next better, because my first kid, I was like, if I'm going to be up, you're going to fucking be up. Like,
I know.
It wasn't nice about it.
It's just not useful. Like, I see that. I've got friends like that. Like, when they would get up to breastfeed, they would make and I'm like, why would you both be tired? Like,
Yes.
It's just not, maybe I'm just so fundamentally practical. And I'm like, well, I don't need him up. Like, what?
Yeah.
I don't need the support that way.
Yeah.
So maybe it is based on, like, if you're suffering from like some postnatal depression, or you feel like you're feeling very anxious or overwhelmed, then yes, you might need that person there, right?
Yeah.
But then they are going to go to work tired and maybe not perform as well and not get the raise. And like, there's lots of these things to think about, right?
Totally. The zooming out is something that, again, with each kid, I became wiser. And I do think that in any given moment, it's not going to feel fair, but you have to zoom out and say, in aggregate, does this make sense?
Right.
And exactly as you articulated, he's working and making the money for the house in this time. And therefore, I'm going to take on this other responsibility to enable that. And this idea that we all have different roles at different times, it's so much easier said than done. But I thank you for airing it out, because I don't think people say that enough. And I think it's really important. And people want to actually feel okay, because it's an
and I think also too, Sarah, I think it's really important to say what your needs are too. And I do see this especially for high achieving women, it is very difficult, because at work, you're making decisions all day long. And then you come home and you're like, oh, what am I feeding the humans? Or they'll be, we just had Mother's Day. It'll be like, what do you want for Mother's Day? Don't make me make one more decision. Like, just tell me what. So it is hard when, a lot of dudes will be like, well, if you just tell me what to do, I'll do it. It's like, no, see and do. Like and I think the same with your kids. Like, your kids need to see and do. I'll be like, hey, I see there's a lot of dishes in the sink. Did nobody see that? Because if you see it, you need to put them in the dishwasher. Like, so teaching them see and do, and saying to your partner, like, I see all the bottles in the sink. Like, I don't want to have to tell you to do it. I want you to just do it. So, because that whole decision fatigue and giving, and even they'll be like, oh, well, I'll go do the groceries. And then the one brand of cereal is not there. So they phone you to problem solve that for them. Not cool. You got to train everybody to be independent. And also then on our side, we can't sweat the small stuff. If they come back with the wrong cereal, don't make a big friggin' deal about it, because then they're going to be so insecure about getting the wrong cereal that they're going to check in with you, and you're going to have to micromanage them. I call it creating your own monster. And I see people do it, like, with their spouses, because they like are hyper feedback. Even with the kids, when they were babies, I only commented on his parenting if their health and safety was at risk. If he dressed them funny or their faces were dirty, big deal.
Yeah, totally. Totally. All right, I know we're a little bit at time. Do you have 5 more minutes? How are you feeling?
Okay, shoot me 5 more minutes. Let's go.
Okay, the last thing was, I was just curious, what are you excited for next? You're moving into other phases. Your kids are moving out of the house. Like, I don't know. I see you're sort of like emerging in yet another way. Like, what are you excited about?
So I'm still very excited about Mabel's Labels. So interesting how we have just grown. Obviously, we acquire new customers all the time. And it's so fun, like our OG customers who are, now their kids are also like at college and getting labels for college, or like we've evolved the brand, and now they're buying for their senior parents. So we have got senior living. So it's just so much fun, just like having this lifetime relationship with these customers and bringing in the new ones all the time and connecting with moms in new places like TikTok and going where they are. And I'm just having a lot of fun. And I plan on doing this as long as it's fun and it makes sense. But I
Yeah.
will say, like, as you grow and you transition and your personal brand changes, that's
Mhm.
okay. Just be transparent about it. I'm not talking about diaper blowouts anymore or pushing a triple stroller around like I used to, because that's not me. So I speak from more a seasoned mom perspective. And we have other people in the company who might do something funny with their kids. So I
Yeah.
think just being transparent. I always say the mamas can sniff out a fake. So don't be that way.
Perfect. Our last two are rapid fire questions, if you would
Ooh,
indulge. Okay.
okay.
If you could go back to your new mom self, if we can even remember her, and say something to her, is there anything that you would want to say to her?
No, I think I'd just be like, you know what? You're on the right track. You're doing a great job with Mackie, like my kid with autism. He's going
Mhm.
to be just fine. Don't worry. And all of the siblings are going to be amazing too. I kind of laugh about how, my son has had he's had a lot of success. He's graduated from college. He's doing a grad program.
Yeah.
He's got a lovely girlfriend, blah, 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 lots of friends. He's a great guy, and I often joke that I'll say on my deathbed that he's my life's greatest achievement, and the other 5 are
Mm.
okay too. And I would just say to myself, "Do what you're doing. You got this." I
Mhm.
wasn't one of those who was like, "Oh, I'm gonna ruin the kids." I'm like, I
Yeah.
knew they'd be fine, and just be you. Trust yourself. Remember, you have guts. You have mama
Mhm.
guts. Listen to them. They're there for a reason.
Yeah. One day, all six of these kids might listen to this. And I know they just heard, as long as the oldest is fine, the others are okay.
Yeah.
I am just curious if there's anything you'd want to like say to them.
Oh gosh, they know everything. I mean, they've just been such an important part of this journey. They've seen this company grow. They've all worked summer
Mm.
jobs at Mabel's Labels. They've been to I brought a baby to Mom 2.0. They've been
Yeah.
to so many things. It's just really a part of their lifestyle. And yeah, no, they've made it. They've made it all worth it. It's just been such a journey. It's such a great ride.
Yeah. Well, you've harvested so much wisdom from all of it. And thank you for taking it and sharing it in all the ways that you have. That's probably fulfilling, I imagine, as like I've done all this and it's like continues to be worth it for many new reasons. So thank you for finding those and articulating them so well. I took many notes. I'm excited. There's so many good nuggets in here. So thank you very much. And everyone buy Mabel's labels.
That's right.
They'll
Yeah,
Julie will be there as long as Mabel's labels stick
that's
on those
right.
clothes
You got it.
longer than
Mabel's
any
Labels,
other label.
Mabel'sLabels.com. Sarah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our chat.
Thank you. This was fun. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Julie Cole, thank you so much for joining us. What a phenomenal character. Very grateful to have shared a conversation with her. She gives me, not that I've interviewed her yet, although manifesting, but very Sarah Blakely Spanx founder vibes of this woman who's just remarkably capable of continuing on, forging ahead, and finding a way. And also has sort of a glow about doing it because it seems fun. This is all fun and exciting. So if they're not friends, I feel like they would they're definitely cut from the same cloth. Um, three takeaways for me. One that we've sort of hit on in other interviews too, but I love hearing in all these different contexts, but the importance of team. And I just loved hearing her talk about starting this business essentially with, family and friends, and how much they reinforced each other, supported each other. The brain gremlins, I forget exactly what she described it, but solopreneurship, you can really get in your head, speaking for a friend, about, is this working? Is it not? Did I make the right choices? Did I not? And it's just so helpful just to have other bodies in the room to calibrate against. So proud of that. I think that's true, team on the business side. And then she talked wonderfully, honestly, about partnership at home, which we can all have great ideals, doesn't always work out perfectly. But I really admired her sense of, we all have a role to play. And I emphasize it in the conversation. But something I did think about in my own personal life is, along the way, I would often get up in the middle of the night exclusively and kind of suffer through this. And that meant, especially when I was on maternity leave. And there's a lot of messaging where that shouldn't be okay. But I also think it can be reasonable and practical. Just as Julie said, if your spouse is the one that's going off to work and needs to function, and you are in this current moment not doing that, then it's okay to kind of suffer and be tired. I don't know. It's all about sort of how does this all work? How does this all work together with all of us? So that was one. The other piece, I love that she said this. Quitting can be for winners too, or quitting is for winners. She's like, I wasn't in the basement 23 years later with Mabel's Labels being like, is it working yet? And obviously easier said than done, but in her case, she emphasized consistently sort of looking for the signals. For them, they were early signals that this is working, but also important to fail fast, as she said. Serial entrepreneurs, they're out there. If something doesn't work, they move on quickly. So again, easier said than done in certain businesses. Sometimes it does take longer, but it's okay to quit. It doesn't mean it didn't work. It doesn't mean it's a failure. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It means the opportunity wasn't the right time for the right thing. And why waste our time? And then my last piece is my very favorite one, which is she said, and I want to like write this on my wall. She's like, I don't care about what I don't care about. And this unbothered, passionate woman is who I aspire to be. And wouldn't it be so nice to be able to feel so clearly that I care about what I care about, and I'm not going to waste my time and energy and swirl on the things that I don't actually care about. And as she mentioned, we got a little bit into mom guilt, and she was like, I just don't have that. I don't understand it. And the idea that often it comes from perceptions of things that you maybe the shoulds is often a source of guilt. There are many, we've talked about this in many ways in other conversations, so it's not always as clean as that. But going back to not caring about what you don't care about, just don't care about it. So simple. All right, Julie Cole, Mabel's Labels. You can get them at mabelslabels.com. They are wonderfully plugged into the PTO emails that I get from our kids' school. I wonder if that's true